Mayor, thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be discussing some of the issues that faces the city of Watseka. And my first question to you, what are you would say are the three biggest issues that faces this city?
Okay, probably the three biggest issues that we have, of course, is the flooding. That's been kind of a big issue for us here over since 2008. Next one would be our declining population. And probably the other thing that we really need to look into working at is economic development within the city.
You are in your first term as mayor, and yes, you could say you were faced with maybe the biggest flood to date in the city. What is being done at this present time to address this flooding problem here?
Okay, well, the thing, Anthony, that we found out was that, with flooding, it became a multifaceted issue. First of all, we felt, as the city council, when I say we really needed to look into what we can do, what is a viable solution for the folks that have had to endure this 3 or 4 times. We've had four 100-year floods in 2008, 2014, 2015, and then 2018, with my year catching the record flood, about my second or third month in as being mayor. What we started out looking at is we looked at doing a possible study with the Army Corps of Engineers to look into doing larger physical projects. And what we found was our 50% share of working with the Army Corps was going to be about $225,000. The city just didn't have that kind of money, and what we found out was from the beginning of the study to when the first shovel would be turned for a large physical project such as levees, dredging, etc., would be about 5 years. We're probably more than likely going to flood within that time. And then, there had been a proposed Army Corps project in the 1970s with levees. And talking to engineers from DNR to city engineers to all sorts of engineers, probably with the flood that happened in 2018, those levees, the city still would have been inundated with water. So, I'm not saying that the Army Corps was wrong by any means, but, it's just a lot of water, and it's increasing all the time. The other thing that I looked at is what would be the best viable solution. And I know this was offered to the mayors during the 08 and the 14 and 15 flood, but I got with a DNR specialist, and they said there's a grant. And immediately I thought, well, it's going to help with dumpsters for cleanup and et cetera, something on a small basis. But as of last spring, the city was awarded a $5.3 million grant. And it's a total reimbursement grant where we can buy these homes of these people that have been flooded out 2, 3, 4 times now since 08. And it'll also demolish and take care of a lot of the costs with doing that. And, I looked at that, and, in talking to engineers, they said, some of these large scale projects may not be the best solution for Watseka. And this is probably the best avenue that we could take for right now. And that's with getting people out of the impact area. And I've been to some of the closings, and Anthony, it just seems like a big burden that's been taken off of these folks' shoulders. But then immediately the emotions kick in with the memories and the traditions that they had with their homes. And your heart really goes out to these people. But like I said, we can get some money into some folks' hands that have been flooded out, again, anywhere from 1 to 4 times, and they can get a fresh start. And from there, looking into it, we joined with the Kankakee County and Iroquois County chairman on getting into a flood alliance with 8 counties in Indiana. And this has been beneficial because we've learned more information about what we can do to see if anything can be impacted with the river. And then we were able to, with the Chairman Wheeler from Kankakee and Chairman Schur from Iroquois County, we were able to get into a study with the Indiana counties to see about what can be done with the river. And the fortunate thing, working with the 2 chairmen, we were able to secure a grant that it did not cost any of our taxpayers any money with that. So from there, we had the Conservancy District meeting that happened last Thursday, which I know Channel 3 was there. Right. And, I think the thing that we got to realize from this is nobody wants an additional taxing body. You know, nobody wants that. But the thing that's coming into is a lot of these larger projects, they're multi-million-dollar projects, and it's usually a 75 to 25% split or a 50-50 split. Counties like Kankakee and Iroquois and the city of Watseka, you know, looking at the levee project in the 70s and putting it to today's dollars, that's probably a $14 to $15 million project with a 25% share. I know Watseka doesn't have that sitting around, so we have to come up with that money somewhere. I know folks are wanting an exact plan, and the plan is to get the district going and to be able to accumulate these monies for these shares so larger projects can be done. Because this situation is not going away. And you heard from the engineers, or the engineers stated that the rains are going to become more, and there's going to be more properties that are probably going to become ineffective. So it comes down to, you know, if we're going to get this done, there has to be some form of funding to go along with that.
My next question to that is that it's not all of Watseka is have this flood issue.
Oh, as far as the flood issue, probably most of it would be in the north and west sides of town, but the south side does get some flooding also. You know, it's not independent. And I can tell you, since on all four of these 100-year floods, it's usually come at about a $500,000 price tag as far as cleanup, which we got to do.
Right. In terms of this proposed new tax, would it be everybody in the city of Watseka who would be called upon to pay that new tax?
Yeah, it's actually going to be in townships. And I forget the fourth one, but I know it's Middleport and Belmont, which entails Watseka and this area. I believe it's Crescent, and I want to say it's Concord. For the most part, it's complete townships. And then once you get north of the Middleport township, then it becomes a 1 mile spread on the Iroquois River going into Kankakee County. I think it entails about 4,500 to 5,000 people within that. And see, the thing in the flooding, and I don't know if people understand this, but we got this from the engineering report. From Rensselaer, Indiana, where the Iroquois River starts, that's the main body of water that comes through here, it's about a 19 to 22 foot drop from Rensselaer, Indiana to Watseka. And then we have the Sugar Creek on the south side of town, and we have the Iroquois River that comes in on the north side, and then the confluence, it comes in on the west side of town where they combine and it becomes a larger Iroquois River. Okay, from wherever those two rivers combine on the west side of town, for about 60 to 70 miles going into the Kankakee River in the Kankakee County, it's about a 1 to 2 foot drop. So the water rushes here, and then it hits the brakes, and it's got nowhere to go but out.
Okay. You said that some persons who was in that affected area was migrated through a fund that was granted, that $5 million fund.
Yes.
So, right. So, is there a person still living in that troubled spot?
Yes. The grant, this mitigation grant, the $5.3 million, it will probably take anywhere from about 2 to 5 years to complete. Okay, we had just about over 100 homes that were affected total that could be eligible for this grant. We took the first 65 because those are owner-occupied homes, and we're starting to resolve those. Now we're getting into it, and it's an involved process with each, and we have the first 8 homes have been purchased, and we're still demolishing some of those homes right now. So it's going to be an involved process. It's going to take a little bit of time, but again, I just looked at if we can put some money into some folks' pockets that they can get a clean start. It's better than being in this impact area because we're going to flood again.
And those 65 homes that is being presently dealt with, what is the reaction from these residents? Are they receptive of it? Was there any pushback? What was their thought?
Well, I mean, so far everything's gone. I mean, we've had the first 8, and I got to sit in on 4 of those closings. And again, you feel you can kind of observe that a burden has been lifted off of these folks. But again, you know, we're still, when it comes down to tearing down these homes, it's still dealing with the emotions of raising kids, memories, traditions, and that's where it gets kind of tough for the folks. But as far as blowback or anything on the negative side, I haven't seen that or heard that from our representative that's handling most of these closings.
And where are those residents moving to?
Well, unfortunately, we're going to be losing some population, which kind of leads into our second item. As of right now, Watseka is kind of land poor. Right now, we're surrounded by great farmland, and we got great farmers surrounding Watseka, which, you know, it's kind of tough for them to take land out of production. And I understand it. That's their business. That's been their family tradition. But one thing I'm working on, we have a former TIF district on the north side of town. And through the Illinois Housing Authority, and I'll probably be working with this on our zoning, or excuse me, my planning committee, as far as we have to do some meetings for that, but we can get this free study to see if we would be eligible and get scored to have a housing project come in where somebody would sponsor that and put up these homes, and that way we can, you know, we can retain some of this population, because we don't want everybody to move out. You know, that makes it tougher for the town, and we've got good people in Watseka.
That segue into the next issue which you spoke about, which is a declining population. What would you say is the main reason for this decline in population?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the floods, Anthony, to be honest with you. You know, we have, before, you know, in '08 and probably in the '90s, we did have a couple factories leave town. You know, so people have to go where the jobs are. But of late, you know, it's been a result of the flooding. I can tell you, and this is what I understood after one of the floods, and I don't know if it was the 14 or 15 or even the '08, but we lost 60 students out of our school district. And for a school district of Watseka size, you know, that's a big hurt, and we'll probably have some as a result of this one also.
At this point in time, is there anywhere in the city of Watseka that you think could be used for safe housing development?
Well, on the north side on Elm, it goes up against the 500-year flood. It's the 100-year flood where it gets kind of critical. So this portion of land did not flood. I mean, we had some that pooled, but that's a grading situation. So again, there's about 30 right there. If we can entice any farmers and we have some money that we can come in with, it's the east side of town. The population probably has to start moving to this side of town.
The next issue you identify was economic development.
Economic development.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Okay, well, you know, that's just a point of, you know, we have some buildings that are empty downtown. One's about a half a city block between 5th Street and 4th Street. We need to kind of entice companies or businesses to come in. You know, I don't want to say, never say never, but manufacturing, that's going to be tough. I mean, you know, we're only about 12 miles away from Indiana, which has some of the lowest property tax and a lower workman's comp rate. But, you know, we might find something that goes with our agricultural base. Watseka is a very agricultural community. I mean, our farmers are really kind of a backbone of this area. And maybe there's something as far as a production there that can be done. I know Chairman Schur with the county, and, you know, they're looking into different avenues also. And, you know, some things that we're working on is, you know, we've talked, there's a potential hotel project. Now we've had a truck stop potential project. And, you know, along with the housing development, and, you know, we've been approved for one of the larger retail stores. So, you know, but the part of that comes with it is we got to find the land. And right now, any excess land, Watseka just doesn't own any at this point. So we got to start looking into how we can remedy that. But downtown, we have properties that are open, and you know, anywhere from retail. You know, we have a lot of services businesses now with restaurants, but you know, we certainly won't turn them away. but we got to keep our options open and keep making contacts, and I like to favor myself that I try to do that on a constant basis.
Would I be correct to conclude that one of your greatest problem right now is to find land both for housing and also for economic development?
Exactly.
Okay, okay. And how hard is it to maybe get those lands or to convince persons to see that big picture?
It's just we got to be repetitive in our efforts to, for the greater good. But again, one thing is we have a lot of great farmers that surround the city of Watseka, and there's a lot of great farmland around here. So if we're going to make those kind of endeavors, we're probably going to have to be paying a premium for land for them to take it out of production. Again, it's taking it out of their livelihood, and that's, I can understand where farmers are coming from on that. But we'll make the effort and see what we can do and go from there.
In terms of the financial status of the city, what's that like?
Well, right now we're still operating in a positive budget. We're about a $6.5 million a year budget. We're working hard, and we realize that we have to make some cuts. One thing that we have had to do is we've taken out some more debt. We're going to be taking back our water and sewer. It's an expensive endeavor, and it's a risky endeavor, and we haven't done it for 23 years. We've hired a couple good men there and some folks that can learn how to do it. We might have to make cuts in order for that to come about. That's probably close to a $3 million project on its own, and we're doing the best we can, and we're looking into all our avenues and where we can buy equipment at the best, and how we can still continue doing projects around town. We got one thing that kind of hurts our water and sewer during floods is we have about 30% of our sanitary and our storm sewer still connected. Okay, and what that means is when it storms hard in this area, all that water goes and has to be processed through the water sewer treatment plant. Well, with the storm, you get more particulates as far as mud, clay, and all that, and that becomes a big maintenance project for our water and sewer plant. So, we have found that we can apply for some low interest and in often cases through the IEPA forgiveness loans.
Right.
And we've got the engineering working on it. One part of that water and sewer is probably a big $1 million project in its own on K Street. The engineering is probably going to be $100,000, close to it, just on that alone. So we're going to have, if we're going to do these projects, especially one of that size, we have to find some kind of outside funding as far as through grants.
Okay. Oh, through grants, and not taxes.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we've had some water rate increases in order to do this endeavor. I think there's another one coming up in May that the three that have been primarily working on this project, the three council members working on this project are thinking there is going to have to come up again. We try to save where we can, and we're looking through the budget, but this year's budget we're really going to be looking through to see where we can make some cuts.
And when will the city fully take over back your water, that water?
Come in May.
So
This May.
So this May, the city will be fully be responsible for water.
Sewer, yes.
Okay. All right. My next question to you. You are one of the city that voted yes, cannabis to be allowed to sold here. How would that benefit your finance also, and is the benefit or the good might outweigh the bad? How did you view
Well,
that?
as far as the comparison, I'm still waiting to hear the research on that through, the various government agencies, as far as the state and stuff like that. We voted, and along with the county, voted to add the 3% tax, that each of us, the fullest maximum tax that we can. It's kind of like the gaming, and I know our council lady, Ulfers kind of brings it up. This is something that the city doesn't have to pay anything for and can reap some benefits from. You know, as far as the zoning ordinance that we passed to do it, as of right now, you know, we've had some interest in it. It hasn't been a lot, but you know, it has to go through a zoning process, and there's a lot of rigors as far as where it can be located in comparison to parks and schools, and it's going to be very regulated. You know, we looked into the situation. I guess the thing that some of the council members had thought about was, I believe Governor Pritzker kind of took the Colorado model, and what if you voted not to take one, any residual tax that came down from the state capital, if you voted not to, you didn't get any of that money. If you said you would take one, I mean retail cannabis, but you don't have one, you can still receive some of that residual money. And that's what it was explained to me. So as to whether that's correct or not, you know, I'd have to do some more research on.
Did you guys do any study to see how much money the city would gain from this?
Well, see, I mean, you can figure on the total dollars, but you know, until the usage gets there, I mean, I'm hearing down in Champaign or Urbana that they're still lined up around the corner trying to get it. But I don't know. You know, we're small town here. I don't know if that'll be necessarily the case here. So that's kind of one of those hard things to judge. It's kind of like a motor fuel tax. You don't know what you're going to get until you actually get into it.
Let's talk about crime. Okay. Is there any crime that is affecting the community?
You know, as far as, you know, break-ins, you know, we're probably on par with that. You know, the thing that's troubling small town America all over, it's not just a Watseka issue. It's the drugs, and it's the hard drugs. I mean, it seems like meth and heroin have really come to the forefront here of late. You know, we are now up to probably the largest that we've had on our police force with 13 officers. We've also added a drug dog. You know, we're working on what we can do as far as that, and we've done more training with our police officers than what we did, I know, with the last administration and for a few administrations in the past to work with this. Our state's attorney we have a great state's attorney, and he's aggressive with what he can do, and you know, the unfortunate thing is, and it probably comes down to more of, we've got the law enforcement side going pretty well. Now we need to look at the addiction, the disease of it, and that might be something with a mental health center or a hospital or something to do, and that's probably something that as a city we need to research. We have a wonderful hospital here in town, and we have a good mental health center here in town that you know, I know are working diligently with that. But as far as that, you know, like I said, like all these other small towns, it's probably dealing with, you know, the drug issue. As far as, you know, we don't have a lot of armed robberies or anything. So, you know, that's probably the issue. And again, I think that's a problem for a lot of small towns.
Are you seeing repeat offenders?
Yeah, and you know, I know with our department and talking to Chief, a lot of those folks are starting to move out of town, and you know, and that's a positive direction. You know, one thing with the flooding is you know, some homes were left vacant, and that's an attraction to that culture. And you know, with tearing down the houses, you know, we're working hard with the mitigation grant, and we're having to tear some down on our own, and it's an expensive process. And I think that's starting to also show some benefits as far as reducing the, you know, at least deterring some of that crime.
I'm going back to that mitigation grant for those houses. You said that should take at least 2 years.
2 to 5 years, probably. It's going to be kind of involved. And the only reason I'm going on that is because I went over and talked to the flood person in Ottawa, and they said theirs was up to 7. Ottawa's a little bigger town than Watseka. But the way that we funded it is through an operating line of credit of $500,000. So with it being a total reimbursement, we have to get that money back. And sometimes with the state, it gets involved in time.
The question that jumped out at me is that, is there any short-term plan because we don't have control over the rain. The rain can come at any time and stuff. So if we should have excess rain again before 2 years' time.
Before they can get to
Right.
the closing.
Yes.
You know, some people are living in their homes. One short term, and surprisingly, it hasn't been as well received, and I would love for people to get involved. And this is more on the early warning system. We did have like a one call. It's kind of like what schools do to get people to notice that school's not going to be open due to snow and stuff like that. We have that in place here. I really thought that it would be a little more well received as far as you know, getting people involved with that. Now, the other thing that there's three other pieces to the flooding puzzle, and if you can allow me, I'll go into that. One thing I found was there's what they call a natural hazard mitigation plan. This allows communities to apply for FEMA grants, and we can get preventative and protective measure monies in order to do that. Typically, it's done on a county level. The counties has been expired for 4 years, and they have other communities that they have to get through, so it's a process that's going to take a little while. I felt the city of Watseka couldn't wait that long, so I started working on that, and my council jumped on board with it, and in looking, I was able to secure a grant. These plans are not inexpensive, they're very expensive. And we have a consulting firm, and we are 3 out of 4 meetings done with that. We're gonna have our public hearing. We're gonna have it submitted probably to FEMA for approval in April. And what that allows us to do, again, right now we cannot apply for any additional FEMA money for protective measures like levees around critical facilities or detention ponds or more mitigation. You know, I can go and apply for more mitigation. One thing with the DNR, it doesn't typically help out on commercial buildings. And you know, we have all these, you know, I said 65 homes, there's more like 100 homes, and the rest of them are investment properties. Then we can maybe get some mitigation money to help those folks out. I don't know if this 5.3 million is gonna last through the entire 65 homes. Right. I think it's gonna be kind of tough. But you know, that's one facet. The other thing is, and Council Lady Alfers and myself, we've been pretty active with this. And she started out looking into what they call the CSR, Community Service Rating. And what that entails is doing a study of a town. I kind of took it to the rest of the way with getting FEMA here to do a survey of areas that we had some concerns about. And we had a laundry list. We have one item left, and that's where concrete and rebar have been dumped on the side of the riverbank, and it's gotten into the stream. That's going to be probably a pretty expensive project, but what the CSR rating does, if we get a good rating, is we can reduce the amount of flood insurance, which is very expensive, anywhere from about, I want to say 10 to 20%, which that could be savings of a lot of money to individuals, but hundreds of thousands to the community combined. So we're looking into that. Other short-term things, we're working on our warning system, what we can do. You know, there's some new technologies out there, but again, we try to have enough sandbags for folks. Some of the new technologies are expensive in their own right. So, you know, we just keep working with our engineering and see what we can do.
One of the questions that came up in the informational meeting on Thursday was removing some of the trees that is in the
log jams?
Right, in the stream of the river. Is there any plan to get that done?
Well, see, that would come with a conservancy district. You know, we do have the river going on the northern boundaries and the south boundaries of town, but they're controlled by the DNR and the Army Corps of Engineers. So anything that's going to come about, it's going to have to be probably a federal program, and it's going to be a combination of local governments and federal government combined to do that. The city on its own, we really can't do much of that unless it was coming into some of the waterways coming into that the city actually owns. And
if on March 17, person vote yes to this tax for the Conservancy District, how soon they will be able to start seeing some form of action or something?
Well, that's just it. You got to accumulate the funds, and I think from that, and I know you were there also, I think it was going to accumulate about $92,000 a year, just on the 93,000 on the year. So, you know, that's going to take at least one cycle of the property tax going out, and you know that's typically late summer. So. You know, we'll probably have to go through. I don't know if there'll be a proportion. It might even be the next fiscal year when that starts, and I'm assuming that's what it'll be. So you're probably talking over a year before you even get that minimum, you know, 93,000. You know, and again, I know I might be repeating myself, but on the levee project in the 1970s that was proposed here, with about a $14 million price tag in today's monies, you'd be looking at the city of Watseka having to come up with $3.5 million. We just don't have that in our regular coffers. If we did that, then you're seeing a lot of cuts. It might be a reduction of a lot of employment. You know, it could be police force and stuff like that. And I know people are happy with our police force as far as, you know, getting the numbers up and the amount of patrol, or city workers, you know.
My final question is, with flooding being the main issue here in Watseka, with persons already leaving Watseka, what can be done to get people to come to live here in Watseka? Well,
you know, downtown, again, we need to clean that up. And here's one thing that we had done, and this has been the year of studies. We have a gentleman that, he's one of our academic Inspiration Award winners over at the high school. His name was Robert Strickler, and he was big with the Department of Defense during the Cold War and worked on Reagan's Star Wars and stuff like that. But he started getting some of our alumni that are all over the country together, and he's a big Purdue grad, and when he talks, Purdue kind of listens, so that's how influential this man is. He paid for Purdue to come over and do a study. And we have several groups that we're waiting to get started, and part of that is working on economic development. How can we prospect different types of businesses to come to town? Right now, we have to find those avenues to do that. One committee is looking back into the communities and what we can do to dress them up. Right now, Main Street, and I had visions when I first got in to do a lot of work on Main Street to make it more conforming, or I don't want to say welcoming to new business. But you know, we got hit with that $500,000 cleanup on the flooding, and that pushes things back. We're still trying to work on getting through that. So, you know, one thing is we need to get the community involved. We need suggestions on that. I mean, there's a lot of good people in town that have good ideas. We need them to vocalize that to our council and see what we can act upon. You know, I guess the old saying with downtown is sometimes you got to clean up the front door in order to get people to come through. You know, one thing that we're looking is, well, we have an opportunity zone that the county economic development director, Ken Bergery, got voted through, so that's an enticement. We're looking at possibly the reinstatement of a TIF 1 to, you know, so we have to come up with creative means to help people that, or businesses that may want to come, to fill in gaps where maybe they're, you know, borrowing or their cash outlay doesn't meet, that maybe we can come in and help those situations. And this council's open to that. And this community, I think, is open to that. And, you know, we're going to attack that where we can, and we may have to target specific types of businesses. You know, I thought that, like I said, more of niche type as far as boutiques. We got a lot of ladies in town with a lot of great taste, wine tasting place, craft beer. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can be done. And, you know, we've had a new boutique open up downtown next to the bank, or in the bank area, and it's been well received. And we've got a new bakery. Well, it's newer. It's been open a couple years now. But there's businesses out there that we can entice people. And the thing is if we can get folks to stop on Main Street, maybe they take a ride on on certain parts of town, you know, a block or so north and, you know, 5 or 6 blocks on the south side. We have some big, beautiful houses. I don't know if we market to some of the retired type folks up in the suburbs. They can sell their house for $400,000, come down here, buy a house for 80, put, you know, another 50 to 100,000 into it and still have money to go down to Florida. You know, I think we just got to get out there and market ourselves. And that's another one of the committees. So.
My final question is for persons who is living here who might be opposed to this proposed new tax, what would you say to them?
As far as the, you know, that might be opposed to it, you know, I understand about not wanting another taxing body. But, you know, a lot of people say that we need to get some things done through the engineering firm. The rains are probably going to get worse and more often. And a lot of people want things done. We got to figure out a way that it's got to be paid for. That might be another thing. If we don't do this conservancy district, then give us your solution on how we can take care of some of these issues without a large price tag. And I mean, I think just the way things are expensive. And, you know, I think everybody is of the agreement. I don't want to speak for everybody, but, you know, we can't sit back and not do anything. We have to do something. Otherwise, it's just more properties are going to get flooded, and we don't want that. You know, with some of these homes that are going down, you know, we don't have as much of the, you know, the runoff from concrete on the homes and stuff like that, and maybe it'll absorb more into the ground. But like I said, I don't know if we can sit back and not do anything, because nothing will get done.
All right, Mayor, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate your time, man.
I do appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk to me about this.